welcome back to another episode of Doodling Through Education. For my CC students, this is Cycle 1, Week 13, Science. For everyone else, that just means that we are going to be talking about Earth's geosphere. And what's included in the geosphere is the core, the mantle, the crust, the hydrosphere, the biosphere, and the atmosphere. Now, before we get started, make sure you head on over to doodlingthrougheducation.com. There's a link in the description, and make sure to grab your science workbook. There's 4 worksheets per week per subject that go along and help cement in some of these concepts that are taught in the Doodling Through Education videos. I also separated them by quarter if you are interested in just buying them 1 quarter at a time. And without further ado, let's start doodling. Today we are going to be talking about the geosphere. But what is the geosphere? Well, the geosphere is not only the rocks, soil, and mantle of the earth, but it also includes the water, the air, and the components of life on earth. In Latin, the term geo means earth. And so it would make sense that the geosphere, there are all the different components of earth. So when looking at the geosphere, there are 6 main parts. And like I said, today we are going to be talking about them. So let's hop into the first one, and that is the core. The Earth's inner core is a huge metal ball that is about 1,500 miles wide. Now, what metal is it made up of? Well, it's mostly made of iron, but the temperature of this ball is about 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit to 11,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a lot hotter than our atmosphere, 6,000 times hotter to be exact, and that makes the iron in the core melt. Now, even though it is melted, it still stays solid because of the pressure that is surrounding all of it. This core is about 3,200 miles deep into the earth. Now, let's talk about the mantle. The Earth's mantle is 1,800 miles thick, and it is on the outside of the core and actually makes up about 84% of the Earth's volume. It is composed of solid rock, but is affected by this intense heat and pressure. And so even though it is solid rock, it actually acts more like a thick, slow-moving liquid. The mantle acts as a sort of platform for the tectonic plates on our Earth's crust, and we'll talk about the crust in a minute. So the mantle is typically responsible for the seismic activity we experience as earthquakes. Moving our way outward, we come to Earth's crust. Now, the Earth has a hard outer layer, and we call it the crust. It only makes up about 1% of the Earth's volume and is made up of many different types of rocks, including igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary. And we'll talk about these 3 types of rocks in a later episode this year. There are 2 different parts of the crust. There's the continental crust and the oceanic crust. The temperature of the crust increases when you go further down into it because of that geothermal energy that is happening in the core. Interestingly, where the crust meets the mantle, the temperatures can be between 392 degrees Fahrenheit to 752 degrees Fahrenheit. Even with this knowledge, the crust is the coldest layer because it is exposed to the atmosphere. Next up, let's actually talk about the hydrosphere. The hydrosphere is the total amount of water on Earth. So this includes water that is on the surface, like oceans, lakes, and rivers, but it also includes water that is underground, such as in wells and aquifers, and it also includes ice, as in glaciers, ice caps, and icebergs. It is important to know that water moves through the hydrosphere in what we call the water cycle. Water collects in clouds through evaporation and then falls to Earth in the form of rain or snow. It is then collected into rivers and lakes and oceans and evaporated again into the atmosphere to start the cycle all over again. Next, let's talk about the biosphere. The biosphere is made up of the parts of Earth where life exists. And so this can extend from the biggest of big trees with the deepest of root systems to the dark environments of the ocean trenches to the high mountaintops. Since life exists on the ground, in the air, and in the water, it's important to note that the biosphere can overlap with the hydrosphere and the atmosphere. There are many different things that can affect the biosphere on Earth, and one of these is the distance between the Earth and the Sun. And so it's amazing to think that God put our planet in just the right place, because if we were any closer to the sun, it would be too hot for us to live here. And if we were any further away, it might be too cold. So it's always good to marvel at the correct placement of our Earth. The tilt of the Earth, which makes seasons, is also an important thing that influences the biosphere. This creates these seasons which change throughout the year. Summer months allow half of the planet to be warm while the other half is cold. 6 months later, that shifts the opposite direction. Now, let's talk lastly about the atmosphere. The Earth is surrounded by a layer of gases, and this is what we call the atmosphere. This is a very important aspect of life because of several reasons. Number one, it helps to protect life and helps life to survive by acting as a big blanket for us. It absorbs the heat from the sun and also keeps the heat inside. It is able to keep the Earth's temperature pretty steady between night and day, so we don't get too cold at night or too hot during the day. The atmosphere also has what's called the ozone layer, and this layer helps to protect the Earth from the sun's radiation. This big blanket also helps to form our weather patterns. Another aspect of the atmosphere that makes it important for life is that plants and animals have to have oxygen to survive. The atmosphere is made up of mostly nitrogen, about 78%, and 21% oxygen. And there are actually a lot of other gases that are in the atmosphere, but they are in much smaller concentrations. And like I said, oxygen is needed by animals to breathe, and carbon dioxide and oxygen is used by plants to survive. And that's all we have about the geosphere. Be sure to do your 4 workbook pages in the Doodling Through Education Science workbook. This will help expand your knowledge and help drive these concepts a little deeper so that hopefully you can remember them. And again, that's found on doodlingthrougheducation.com. And on that note, remember to be kind, follow God's will, and take care. Bye.